So because we don't take equity, we don't charge, we've had companies come through who are your typical accelerator companies, all the way to companies who are 30, 50 strong, who've raised their Series A, Series B, who want to use Houston as either their US launching pad or a new sales channel or just a new market that they can evaluate. When you have 10 million patient visits per year, it's its own market, as you can imagine. I'm here to talk about something pretty exciting. It's actually a parking lot company. And you may be asking, what the hell is this guy doing talking about a parking lot company? And really there's one word, it's innovation. And I know we're kind of sick of hearing about innovation. Everybody wants to be innovative. It's a hype word. Every hospital, every business unit is putting innovation on their forefront. But really, I contend that innovation may be easy to define, but sometimes it's difficult to tell unless it's in retrospect. It's kind of like, to me, defining a law but not understanding the spirit of the law. So what is innovation? Implementation of novel and useful ideas that are going to be for the betterment of society, in this case, for healthcare. So let me start with a little bit of a backdrop. The great city of Houston. I did not know this when I moved there 2 years ago, but it is the most diverse city in the US. Over 140 languages are spoken in the city of Houston. It's more diverse than New York City, than Manhattan, which is pretty crazy. What does this mean? Great restaurants, good food, but it also creates an environment or a culture of innovation. And we know that diversity, not just based on race, gender, ethnicity, but a culture where there's diversity in thought, diversity in personality, innovation bubbles up, innovation grows. You can't mention Houston without talking about the energy industry. We're actually the energy capital of the US, with over 4,800 energy firms within the city of Houston. So if you're an engineer and you're in Houston, chances are you're petroleum, you're mechanical, you're working on oil and gas. Had something to do with this oil boom several hundred years ago or 100 years ago. Lastly, it's the space city. Who here knows what the first word spoken on the surface of the moon was? That's what Governor Perry thought, but he was actually wrong. It was connect. Connect light, I think, was the first term used. Then later on, Houston, tranquility base here. The eagle has landed is the famous line that people sometimes quote, but that came after several technical words. So Houston was not the first word, even though that's what it says. But we are definitely a city known for the space industry. NASA, obviously, their Johnson Space Center is located just southeast of the city limits. And so why am I mentioning all this? Well, first and foremost, just to kind of give it a little plug, I'm actually sitting as a scientific advisory board member on the mission to Mars and space health. So talk about innovation. Think about 30 years in the future when we're going to be traveling to Mars, 4 astronauts, a 6-month journey there, 12 to 18 months on the surface of Mars, 6 months back. What kind of medical technology do they need? What are they going to have in place so that if something does happen in space, none of which the plan is right now are going to be physicians, how are they going to take care of themselves? How are they not going to go, well, my biggest concern is their mental health. How are they not going to go crazy? If you have 4 people in a room for 6 months, I think anybody would go nuts. In fact, they're doing studies right now where they're sticking 4 people in a hotel room, and they've got up to about 90 days before things start breaking down and people start going a little crazy. So they're trying to figure out team dynamics and everything in place. How do you qualify or how do you overcome that problem? I mean, imagine you can't even speak to your family members without a 90-minute, or depending on where you're at, delay. So it's kind of hard to have a conversation like that. So that's the backdrop, and this is not a pitch to sell you on Houston, how amazing of a city it is, although I'm learning that is the case. But really it's a backdrop for what I'm about to tell you next, which is the audacity a cotton gin farmer had. And he had done really well in the cotton gin industry. And he said, you know what, I'm going to buy this swampy part of the land just southwest of downtown Houston. And I'm going to make it the world's best, most innovative medical healthcare system. And everybody was like, seriously, kind of laughed at him. But he had this intention because his family had suffered through some healthcare issues, and he really wanted to leave a legacy. He really wanted to, as most of us do, have value in what we bring and have value once we're gone from this earth that we can point to, or our families can point to and say, it's because of that person that this exists. And so he bought this land and he posted this sign on this empty, swampy land, Texas Medical Center, coming near you, basically. And what he did is he threw a foundation, and many of you may know the hospital, MD Anderson, but through a foundation known as the Anderson Foundation, same name, he set up a third-party TMC corporate organization that he bequeathed the land to. And he said, okay, guys, you take care of the land. One condition: the land is for free to anyone who has a mission to change healthcare, innovate, and conduct research. He said, gift the land away. I want you to take all this land that I've kind of drew a circle around, it's about 2 square miles, and give it away. Now, it's on you as this real estate company to make a sustainable business and to pay yourselves and to be able to support the land and everything that goes around real estate. So what did they do? And that's kind of the innovative part I'm telling you about here in a second. But the rest is really history. From that first open land available to anybody. I mean, can you imagine how else to get hospitals to come to your land? It's like, hey, you can have this for free. Amazing things have been occurring all the way till present day. And now you have a medical city. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what this medical city entails. But just in the background is downtown Houston. In the foreground is a Texas Medical Center. It truly is a medical city. The history is astounding. The legacy that's been left or continues to develop is astounding. 1964, Dr. DeBakey does the first coronary artery bypass graft. 1968, Dr. Denton Cooley, first human heart transplant. And I don't know if you guys know, and if you don't, but you should look up the Denton Cooley and the DeBakey debacle, the conflict, the fight that went on between them, between Texas Heart and Methodist, I believe. Methodist Hospital. Really interesting story. That's a whole other lecture on its own. They were really competitive, but also friendly. But that competition, they were racing to be able to be the first to do something, to be able to create the new artificial heart, to be able to implant the next LVAD. That competition bred innovation, and it set a legacy for the Texas Medical Center. 1971, Texas Children's collaborated with NASA to produce a plastic isolator bubble for this child who had severe immune deficiency. And you guys probably all know the story of the boy in the bubble. That's where it came from. 1976, Dr. Red Duke came up with an idea for Lifelight, which was the first air transport ambulance service. And it goes on and on and on. And fast forward to a few years ago, in 2014, our community looked back and said, there's some amazing things happening, and we're having a difficult time just keeping up with it. There's hospital on top of hospital. Some are competitive, some are duplicative, some are friends, some are not friends. How can we support this amazing medical city? And from that came a couple of things that I'm going to talk to you about here in a second, but I wanted to kind of show you some of the names that are now part of the Texas Medical Center. Baylor College of Medicine, MD Anderson, Texas Children's, A&M, Tier Memorial Hermann. Some of these names I'm sure you've heard before. Any one of these health systems could stand alone and be considered innovative and amazing within themselves, but they're right next door to each other. And what do I mean by right next door to each other? So if you drew a 2 square mile circle within just southwest of downtown Houston, you would capture 61 institutions, 21 of which are hospitals, academic centers, and research institutions include the rest, all of which are dedicated to healthcare. So you literally are walking down the street looking at these different organizations. And by the way, they're all independent and they're all competing with each other. 10 million patient visits per year in this health system, 50 million developed square feet. This number is wrong, 9,200. It's now over 10,000. And before I came to San Diego, I looked up the entire San Diego County, and I counted how many beds are included in all the different hospitals. They have 7,000. They just went up 2,000 as of 2 years ago. So within 2 square miles, we have more beds available than the entire San Diego County has. And why am I telling you all this? Because the critical mass that's present within Houston is a playground for innovation. It's a petri dish. And I'm going to tell you how we're kind of leveraging that and exploring that as we go along. So that 2014 conversation with the community leaders included the C-level suite folks from each of these institutions, included community leaders, included those who had any decision-making power within the Texas Medical City. And we said, what do you need? Where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? How can we combine certain things? How can we fill in certain gaps? And it came up with these 5 themes, really straightforward, practical themes. 1, of course, innovation. Everybody wants to be innovative. 2, health policy. We want to be able to set the standard. We want to be able to be forward-thinking in how health policy comes down instead of being reactionary. Clinical research. Imagine, just as an example, 21 hospitals. So TMC Corporate has a clinical research institute. Their first goal is to create a single IRB to have access to all 21 hospitals. Talk about a multi-site opportunity that's just under the umbrella of this third-party TMC Corporate. And they're actually making really good progress. So a quick step back before I finish. TMC Corporate, remember, is a real estate and parking lot company. And I'm going to tell you why a parking lot is important here. 4th, genomics. 5th, regenerative medicine. Parking lots. Okay, so now you have land. You're going to give it away for free, but you got to have some kind of income capital to continue to sustain yourself, to maintain that land. We're essentially like a little municipality. We provide security. We do landscaping. The roads are our roads and not the city's roads, so we have to take care of all that. Well, how do you do that? We created a crap ton of parking garages, and we make over $90 million a year in parking. When you have 10 million patient visits per year, when you employ over 115,000 people, including physicians, nurses, technicians, et cetera, they all need to park somewhere. So that's the creativity, that's the genius that really allows for some of these programs to be kicked off. And now as a third party who owns the land, we have this godlike view. We can look down and say, you know what, we're going to try to make you guys work together. We're going to force collaboration with these 5 themes supporting us, because these are themes that you guys told us you need. And I'm going to focus on the Innovation Institute. That's the one that I work for. It's the one that really got off the ground the fastest and the soonest, about 4 years ago. And I'm going to show you how we kind of are forcing collaboration to an extent, but it's a welcome force, if you know what I mean. So the TMC Innovation Institute, really, we can say is shaping the future of health, because we're uniting not just these institutions, but we're uniting promising innovators, researchers, scientists. Incredible stuff is happening in the medical center, but half the time, one organization doesn't even know what the other organization is doing. Right next to each other. It's really kind of interesting. And so now we have this perspective, we can kind of filter through that and see who's doing what and how to combine, how to separate, how to challenge what they're doing and really support innovation. So we do that in a number of ways. We have 5 different programs, and you can think of these programs really just from a stage of supporting startup companies at different stages within their life cycle. So we focus primarily on medical device and digital health. Our partners focus on therapeutics and diagnostics. I'm gonna walk you through what each of these programs mean and how they affect innovation. So this is our campus. It's about a mile south of the medical center. It's about 700,000 square feet. Guess what? We own it, so it's really good to own real estate in this business. So we can do whatever we want with this building. It's actually an old Nabisco cookie factory. Originally, we turned it into just overflow. So for the hospitals who need a little bit of extra space, or they're building an extra wing, they can lease a space, they can lease a room to be able to have the change management take place while they have some place to go. Then we started to push them out slowly. We occupy now about 250,000 square feet with all of our innovative efforts. The idea is to overcome this entire building to be an innovation neighborhood. So TMC X is our kind of most well-known program. It's a medical device and digital health accelerator. The program lasts 4 months. We invite companies from all over the world to participate. February to June, we focus on digital health companies. August to November, we focus on medical device companies. We don't charge anything. We don't take any equity. That has caused us to be somewhat stage agnostic and from an accelerator standpoint. Generally, an accelerator obviously gives a little bit of financing up front and then takes a certain percentage of equity, and they do that with certain types of companies, because not all companies are willing to give up that kind of equity for, let's say, 100,000, 6%. So because we don't take equity, we don't charge, we've had companies come through who are your typical accelerator companies, all the way to companies who are 30, 50 strong, who've raised their Series A, Series B, who want to use Houston as either their US launching pad or a new sales channel or just a new market that they can evaluate. When you have 10 million patient visits per year, it's its own market, as you can imagine. And so we've been able to really capture a unique piece of the accelerator puzzle here. Now, we get about 200 to 300 applicants per cycle, and we accept 20 to 25. So not everybody that comes through is accepted. But more recently than anything, we've been seeing a high propensity of people coming from the West Coast and the East Coast and international. Houston itself, we don't have that many folks, actually. In this cohort, we have 23 companies. I think 4 are Houston-based or Texas-based, 9 are international, the majority are West Coast, some East Coast as well. And what the West Coast companies are telling us is it's crowded in Silicon Valley. It's crazy. We're competing against 27 other startup companies. You guys have a green field. It's like a playground, like I mentioned earlier. So we're getting really good feedback. To date, we've supported 88 companies. We're now supporting another 23, so we're going to add well over 100 after this cohort is over. We're in our 7th cohort. Those companies have collectively raised about $130 million before and after the accelerator. This is the number that we're really proud of right here, 220 customer engagements. The way that we measure that is through formal agreements that these startups have with our institutions. As a third party, we can't force collaboration. We can't say, okay, startup A, you're going to go work with Memorial Hermann. Memorial Hermann's going to do a pilot study with you, or they're going to support you through some kind of co-development effort. We can't do that, unlike some other accelerators that can. So we were really, at first, concerned, are these hospitals going to be responsive? Are they going to work with these startups? How are they going to appreciate innovation? Are they going to look at it like we look at it? And right off the bat, we've noticed that they're willing to engage almost at the outset of the cohort because they see TMC X as a filter. These guys have looked at a bunch of startups, they understand what's good, what's bad, they're vetting them for us, and then they're pushing them forward. So on average, we get per company 2 to 3 letters of intent or formal engagements or some kind of pilots that these companies walk away within 4 months of a time, within a 4-month time period. We thought there was no way hospitals were going to move that fast. It was going to take 9, 12 months, and these numbers are going to come slow, but it's been pretty impressive, and we're pretty excited about it. These are our companies from our last medical device cohort. This is TMC X5. We're now in TMC X7. And I wanted to just kind of show you that we don't have any particular therapeutic focus. We don't have any necessary requirements for stage except one, which is you have to be fully dedicated to your company, at least have one founder that is, and you have to have a work SaaS prototype, whatever that means. We just wanted to make sure that this is not a side project. This is not something a professor is working on or a physician is working on their side, but it's something that they're fully dedicated to supporting. So that's our minimum requirement. The other thing is these companies represent therapeutic areas all the way from OBGYN to cardiovascular to at-home use to direct-to-consumer to direct-to-hospital, a variance in business model, a variance in therapeutic focus. We're just looking for the best companies. We're looking for the most disruptive companies, ones that we can really support and live with for 4 months, which includes their personalities. So we screen a lot of crazy entrepreneurs out because of that. But I want to let you guys hear from them for a minute. So I'm going to start with a couple of them. Polyvascular. This is a really good case study for us. This is a company that came out of Baylor College of Medicine that we had to convince to be a company. It was a physician and 2 researchers, 2 engineers that worked for Texas Children's and Baylor. And they've been working on this heart valve for some time, and they had no idea how to commercialize it, and Baylor had no idea how to commercialize it. Not talking bad about Baylor, but they just, in this case, didn't know how to do it. And so we convinced them, like, listen, just form an LLC, come through our accelerator program, and we'll support you.
I'm Henry Justino with Polyvascular, and our aim is to transform the care of children with congenital heart disease by developing an entirely new generation of valves made of medical-grade polymer. The most commonly used valve is a human cadaveric valve. Our body's immune system really targets this tissue and destroys the valve, sometimes very rapidly. The valve we've designed is entirely devoid of any biologic tissues. Our approach would allow us to deliver these valves in a minimally invasive fashion. They can last over 200 million cycles and even grow with the child. We saw a gap in the care of children with congenital heart disease, and we said, let's roll up our sleeves and do something about it.
So I'm really proud of that company because I feel like they wouldn't exist had it not been for us just kind of pushing them along and getting them out. So now they're doing really well. They're hiring their CEO because they realize that they can't run a company on their own. But they've gone through our program and they've been able to kind of see what they've been working on through research is actually something that's commercializable, and it doesn't need to sit on the shelf of an Office of Technology Transfer and hope for licensing. It can actually do the activities required to bring it to patients sooner and faster. So a pretty exciting company. This one, Vitals, I make fun of him because it looks like Vittles. If you guys are from the South, you know what that is. But this is a company that was born in South Africa. They thought, because like most of us do, that Silicon Valley is where things happen. And they moved to Silicon Valley, and they found themselves struggling because of all the competition, because of the crowdedness, because of the kind of the great innovation that's taking place there, but there's just too much of it for them. So they came through our program and have subsequently moved to Houston. So I'm going to let Werner talk a little bit about Vitals.
My name is Werner, I'm the founder of Vitals. And with Vitals, we're developing a platform that enables healthcare providers to continuously and remotely monitor their patients' vital signs. It's unobtrusive, it's very thin. We built a ton of sensors into the device: temperature sensors, PPG sensors, accelerometers. We monitor body temperature, pulse, RR intervals, respiration rate, blood oxygen levels, sleep and movement. Hospitals that implement a contact-free or continuous monitoring platform can save up to $20,000 per annum per bed. What we would like is to run our pilots with TMC hospitals and then commercialize our device.
So these companies, they come through Houston for the better part of 4 months. It's really 6 weeks where we put them through some significant curriculum and programming. In fact, John Spears is one of our advisors, and he teaches some of the classes related to quality. We have, and something that we couldn't do without these advisors, is we have 250 folks that support us, ranging from subspecialist physicians to regulatory and quality experts that are willing to give back and commit to the innovation that's taking place in Houston. And so those advisors are actually the ones that do the teaching. They're the ones that sit in the panels, do the workshops, hold the office hours, and really nurture these companies as they're going through the process. My job, along with some of the other strategists, is to support them one-on-one while they're going through. So identifying some of the milestones that they want to achieve for themselves while they're going through this 4-month program, because as we all know, 4 months is a snapshot in time, right? We don't want it to be, here's 4 months, here's a bunch of curriculum, learn it, and then leave. We want to provide some stickiness, some opportunity for relationships to grow. So if they're coming from outside of Houston, there's a willingness and desire for them to stay. And so that's exactly what happened to Werner. He got his pilot with Texas Children's, and he's actually starting to run it right now. And so it was because of that relationship that he actually chose to move his company to Houston. One last example. Another one that I'm proud of, Alleviant Medical. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the program that they went through, which is called TMC Biodesign, very reflective of Stanford's biodesign. But they went through a program that we have that's intended to build out startup companies. Then they went through TMC X, and then they used some of our other programs. But I'm going to let, I think, Jake tell you a little bit about their project or product.
My name name's Jake Kriegel. I'm CEO of Alleviant Medical. The medical device that we're developing is a minimally invasive transcatheter system targeting congestive heart failure. One of the reasons why it's so hard to treat is that it's many different conditions that are all kind of converging around this elevated left atrial pressure. We come in through a 4mm puncture in the grunt and deliver our device up into the heart, where an expandable blade is used to create a precise connection to join the left and the right atrium. And the key here is that we don't leave anything behind in the heart. That's a major advantage that can really change the treatment landscape for this disease.
Where's Mike? Is Mike still here? I need to tell him about the regulatory strategy. It's killing me. That's Alleviant. So right now we have 23, as I mentioned, med device companies currently participating. They wrap up in November. November 14th is their demo day. So if anybody's available to come to Houston or live stream it, it'll be an opportunity for them to showcase kind of not only their technology and their company, but what they've been able to accomplish within 4 months of being here in Houston. And so some of these companies you may have heard of, but once again, ranging from different therapeutic focuses, different stages of companies. Really, it's a smattering of companies. And what we've seen, and this is something that we didn't really know until looking back, is that putting companies next to each other that are at different stages was as beneficial, if not more beneficial, than putting them through a program, a regimented program that's a one-size-fits-all. They learned so much from each other, and they still do, and that's the feedback that we've been getting. It's almost like half of the value that we bring is just putting companies in the same room for 4 months. And from that, they're able to kind of get new mentors, new advisors, new interested colleagues, and really being an entrepreneur, as you guys probably know, can be somewhat lonely at times, and having opportunities to bounce ideas off your colleagues is extremely valuable. So I'm gonna step back to the next step. So TMC X, we just talked about. TMC X Plus, very straightforward. We're a real estate company, so we offer them space. So if you're a life science startup company and you just need a place to hang your hat in Houston, we will lease you office space. It's an office pod. It seats 6 people in a large room and then 2 private offices. We give it at a price, a premium that's much more inexpensive compared to downtown Houston, because we want to attract, we want to pull those guys in. We have a wait list now. So we have 25 offices, 25 companies, some of which came through X, some of which just came because they wanted to be able to hang their hat in the medical center. And I cannot tell you how great it is to have them co-located within our institution, because the number of serendipitous meetings between these later stage companies, generally these are a little bit later stage, and the accelerator companies is tremendous. We also leverage them by saying, listen, you guys have been, some of these companies are at a much later stage. You've been around for a while. You've done trials with Methodists. Come teach our startups how you did that. Tell them how to get there, how to get through with the path of least resistance. So having them in our space is extremely valuable. We don't tell them that because we don't want them to think that they're not that great. But we have them sit on panels. They have access to our events. It's really great to have them just co-located right next door in our campus. Next is TMC Biodesign. So as I mentioned, Alleviant was one of the participants in Biodesign. Who here has heard of Stanford's Biodesign program? Great, very reflective, almost same thing. So we hire 6 to 8 fellows per year. We pay them for 1 year with the intention of you're going to spin out a startup company after this year is done. We split the 6 to 8 into 2 teams or 2 companies, one dedicated to a medical device focus, one dedicated to a digital health solution. We make the companies up ourselves. So we have them apply in general online application, and then we pick 1 physician per team or 1 clinician. We pick 1 engineer or software developer per team. We pick 1 researcher. We pick 1 entrepreneur or 1 manager per team. So we are creating the company. And what I could say by far the most difficult part is putting people in a room who don't know each other, and now you're going to be a company for a startup company. So a super stressful environment. But we cuddle them. We hold their hand through the process. We teach them about needs finding. So they spend about 3 months in our hospital systems shadowing care teams, physicians, administrators, identifying unmet clinical needs. They come out of that with 300 or 400 needs. And they're like, hey, did you know our healthcare system's broken? We're like, yeah, no shit. Thanks for telling us that. But they're then tasked with taking those 300 to 400 needs and paring them down to 1. And that takes another 3 months, because we obviously have them walk through a process. It's not a matter of just figuring it out in a couple of days, but they'll pare it down from 300 to 150 to 75, 25, 15, 3, and then 1. Then they have to invent a solution for that particular need that they chose. Finally, it's about implementation and actually building a company around it and commercializing that device. So after the year's over, we let them go. They're on their own to swim, sink or swim, some sinking. We are in our 4th year now. So of the 6 companies that have formed, 2 disbanded almost immediately because they hated each other. That was pretty much the reason. Oh my God, I can't wait for this year to be over with. 4 have gone on to raise funding, to be successful for a startup, just raising money so far. And we're supporting them in a number of different ways after the program. So it's not like we just push them out the room and say good luck. They can go through our accelerator program. They can have space in X Plus. There's some corporate partners I'll introduce you to here that they can work with. There's a lot within that one building. We've essentially created an ecosystem within that one building. And so they're not on their own. We own their IP. We license it right back out to them. So a question that I often get is, how the heck do you guys make money? I'm going to tell you two ways outside of parking. One is that we own intellectual property that biodesign students or fellows create, and we license it back. And obviously there's an ROI, hopefully, on that end. And then two, I'll tell you a little bit about our venture fund a little bit later. This is one company I wanted to highlight, Intuitab. So this is our first, one of our first biodesign teams. And the only reason I want to highlight them, they made a really cool device that helps you to locate intervertebral disc space so that you can drop a spinal needle into the right place. Something difficult sometimes for residents and for people that aren't used to doing spinal taps or lumbar punctures. They created a device. They went to TMC X. They learned how to grow up as a company. They went over to X Plus. They're still there. We can't get rid of them. They also have an office in J Labs, which is one of our corporate partners, which is right next door. So now they're out for 3 years. They've raised over, I think, a 1.5 million, and they're just doing really well. So it's kind of one of our showcases that we can show that we've created a company and continue to support it, hopefully all the way to the point of acquisition or IPO. So the next program really is corporate engagement or corporate programs. We have several corporate partners that act as sponsors or that support us through our advisor roles, but we also have resident partners. So we have people that live with us right next door. In fact, we have Johnson & Johnson's J Labs right next door at TMC X. Wonderful partners to have. We tap into their resources all the time. They use our startups to see whether or not it's something that they'd be interested in. They support about 43 startups right now, primarily in diagnostic and therapeutic space, but they also have med device and digital health companies. So we're very complementary, but it's fantastic to have them right next door. Beautiful space. You can essentially lease a desk to a full lab through JLabs. It's a no strings attached model. So you don't have to have an agreement with Johnson & Johnson. You don't have to give up equity. It's basically you paying for space, their shared lab resources, and then obviously the opportunity to tap into some of their resources through J&J. Next is AT&T Foundry in the back of our space. They're interested in anything that's obviously connected that could potentially leverage their cellular network on the back end. So as you know, connected devices is the next biggest trend, and we see a lot of that coming through our accelerator, some of which work with AT&T, but they also bring in their own. But just having them as partners there is substantial. AT&T Foundry, I think there's like 6 of them around the world, and this is their healthcare focus. They each have a different theme. And their newest member is J&J's Center for Device Innovation. So this may be something of interest to you. This is essentially, let's see if I have any pictures of it. No, I don't. An externalization of their R&D department to some extent, but only focus on high-risk projects. So things that, as an R&D department in a large company that you would never touch, they're interested in working with those kind of things. So startups that are very early stage that generally would come to J&J and they would say, that's nice, that looks promising, come back to us when you're in human, right? That's usually the conversation you have. And oh, by the way, do A, B, and C, and then we'll see in 3 years. Now, what they want to do is they want to capture those conversations and be able to build relationships at a very much earlier stage than that. So they're willing to work with folks at the concept stage. And what they've done is they built out a machine shop, workbenches, and basically have teams of engineers that support the co-development of medical devices. Obviously those that fall within their strategic alignment, and that this is much more a strings attached model. So they're not going to work with you unless it's something that they could potentially acquire or invest in. But they're now working with, I think they just opened up in November and already have 6 projects, also some of which they're doing internally on their own. Great partners to have in our space. But this is the kind of stuff that we want to continue to build out. One of the things that we're building now is TMC Xi. It's 63 office spaces available to those industry partners that have, that are service providers to startups like VC groups or angel groups or IP attorneys, folks that want to be able to see what we're bringing through the institution and be able to pick and choose who their clients could be. And so we've had a lot of requests for that, actually. And that's the reason why we're building out TMC Xi. Some things I'm not supposed to talk about. ABB Robotics is building their healthcare lab right next door to the CDI. Baylor College of Medicine is building out their healthcare innovation lab. They're incubating several companies. So it's catching fire, as you can see. And this is only 4 years old. Last thing I want to mention, one of the last things actually, second last thing, is our venture fund. So one of the things that we found out very quickly is to create a startup ecosystem, you have to have a little thing called capital. You have to have some fuel on the fire if you want to be able to create something that's sustainable and can support startup companies through their different life cycle stages. And so we decided to put our money where our mouth is and to develop our own venture fund. So we took part of our operational budget, about 25 million of that, all from parking, surprise, surprise, and we said we're going to invest in startup companies that come through our space or have some nexus within the medical center. So we invest about $2 million per year in these startups. So far, we just opened this up, actually, late last year was the first investment, and we've already invested about $2.5 million. All of these companies except one have gone through TMC X. The one that hasn't is Coronova, and they were a J Labs company. So we're investing in companies that have some relationship with us. It doesn't necessarily have to be companies that are only based in Houston, but if they've gone through our program, we're investing or considering investment in them. This honestly has been one of the biggest sticking points for a while, is how do we attract VC groups? We have a pretty strong angel network, but guess what? They're interested or are used to investing in oil and gas. That's not a surprise in Houston. And we're starting to see slowly they're making some changes in investing in healthcare. And we knew that as soon as we started to announce this and put our money there, people would be interested. And as a matter of fact, just last year we announced this fund. All of a sudden now VCs want to co-invest with us. Baird Capital is now one of our partners. And now people are coming because we actually built it before, or actually did something before we try to have these conversations without putting our money where our mouth is, essentially. All right, so last thing is TMC3. So this is our next venture. So the Innovation Institute has gotten off the ground along with the other 4 institutions. They're doing really well. And we kept kind of going back to the drawing table. And it really is about challenging yourself and making yourself your biggest competitor and really saying, okay, how do we outcompete ourselves? What is the next thing that we can do? And you would think just 4 years old, we'd be focused mostly on TMC Innovation Institute. Not to say we're not, but we're also focused on the future. And so we looked at our campuses. And by the way, TMC Innovation is way down here. We have a research campus and we have a clinical campus. And we have this huge, does anybody know what this is? Parking lot, that's right, wow. Huge parking lot right in between. And people park here and they have to walk or take a bus to either way. And we said, what's missing, and something I didn't mention, all of this is not-for-profit organizations. So you don't have like restaurants there, you don't have retail space there. It's kind of a food desert to some extent, a retail desert. So we got our board, our board to change the bylaws and to allow us to create a commercial space in between the clinical campus and the research campus. So that's what it looks like now, this wonderful parking lot. MD Anderson has a building there. I believe that's CHI St. Luke's has a building there. That's the actual med center there. And we're going to clear it out only after we've now committed partners that are going to participate in TMC3, which is a translational research campus. So we have A&M, UT Health, MD Anderson, Baylor College of Medicine, and Rice that have all agreed to say, you know what, we're willing to commit and build space, lab space that's dedicated to translational research here on that green area. An architect student actually came up with this really cool idea. Why don't we build a helix, double helix, and we have multiple levels, one of which is going to be retail space, one of which is going to be a jogging trail, some really cool stuff, a park, some fountains in there. And then the base pairs or the attachments are going to be these buildings that are the translational research buildings or the actual labs that are shared between these partners. And so this is kind of obviously a rendering of what it's going to look like. But it's and then obviously the space is going to open up for additional buildings. In the back is a TMC hotel. So we're really focused on, how do we force collaboration? How do we get these partners that would never probably talk to each other because they're competitors? How do we do that? We offer them land. We offer them planning. We offer them innovation. We offer them opportunities that otherwise they wouldn't have for themselves. So that's our next big effort. $4 billion effort, breaks ground next year, $2 billion of which is committed by our partners. So it was only after the commitment from our partners that we were able to even attempt to accomplish this. And so that's Houston's gift, a next gift to the world. We want to make it, not just about oil and gas, not just about the space industry, but collectively about healthcare and leveraging this huge medical complex that we have. So thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate it.
So this is the part where you have questions for him. I will start because I know our studio audience watched your presentation and they thought, that sounds good. How do I get some of that? So if I'm a medical device startup and I want some of what you're selling, what do they do?
I think the easiest way to get involved in what we do is through our accelerator, TMC X. So right now the applications are open online for digital health companies, and that definition is pretty loose. That could be a connected device, that could be a software play for our next cohort, which starts in February. So that's probably the easiest for a company coming outside of Houston to get involved in what we're doing.
Hi, Lance. Yeah, Scott Thielman, Product Creation Studio up in Seattle. I'm wondering what you're doing to squash things like Uber, ride sharing, metro buses, those sort of things that might impact your parking fees that are coming.
That is a great question. We're not doing anything to squash them. We're actually trying to think about how to compete with them. So we're talking to ride-sharing services and trying to partner with them to figure out how can we leverage the great technology that they bring to the forefront in a way that is beneficial for both parties. So how can we, and there's actually some really good companies out there that are dedicated to ride-sharing for medical personnel and for patients that we're looking at. So yeah, I think the point is not to squash them, but to partner with them. We've talked about putting like a toll bridge charging ride-share to come through. Yeah. But I don't think that's going to work.
So Maren Nelson, also from Seattle, and I have my own consulting business.
Awesome.
How do the angels get involved with the current business model you've got?
Yeah, so we basically, I don't know how to say this politely, but we serve them hand and foot. So what we do is we have 2 events per cohort where we're basically introducing them to our startup companies and saying, here are the companies. If you want to meet with them, great. We can do a speed networking event. We can do those things. We have demo days, so we have opportunities for them to see what we have to offer. We've actually started events called Catalyst that we have quarterly that's about the investment environment in Houston as it pertains to healthcare, so it's an informational thing. One of the pictures that you may remember is it's this huge main space. And the main space, not only does it serve as an opportunity for demo days and kind of pitch competitions, but we offer it for free to any company, organization that wants to do something in healthcare and innovation. If you want to host an event, if let's say the VC group or the angel group wants to have one of their meetings there, they can have that space. And what better than to have that opportunity and as well as have the startup companies right there that can benefit from it. So there's a lot of things that we're doing, offering them space, offering them due diligence. So I live with these companies for 4 months, and I would say that I know them pretty well, sometimes too well. And we offer our insight to these angel groups and saying, who we think are kind of the best bets for their particular group, their particular theme, their particular interest. So we offer that due diligence back to them. And they've been responsive. And we've seen angel groups now that traditionally invest in oil and gas starting to invest in healthcare companies that come through our space. So it's been good.
Hi, I'm Christine Zamarodian, also a medical device compliance consultant, also from Seattle.
Seattle's well represented.
So my question's a little off topic for medical devices, but I'm curious about all this building. I know there's a lot of green building initiatives around Texas related to healthcare space, and I just wondered if you guys in your design work for that are in touch with all those folks that are doing the green building.
Yeah, I know that was a huge initiative for TMC3. I don't know what it as it pertains to current build-outs of the institutions that are currently in our space. But I honestly don't know enough to give you a good answer to that. I just know it was something brought up and discussed when making the plans for TMC3. We break ground next year, and it's a 4-year build-out. It's a pretty long build-out. So, yeah, sorry, I don't know the details about the green build-out, but you're right. I mean, that came up time and time again in the discussion that we had.
Hi, Tor Alden. Thanks so much for the talk. It's amazing accomplishments you guys are doing. I am not from Seattle. I'm from New Jersey. So I wish I was from Seattle. So a couple questions. We gave a talk today about startups and just the idea of how many, 3 out of 4 startups fail. And there was a question that came up, I don't know, yeah, there it is. So the question we're burning to ask is the definition of success. And you have a lot of logos up there. 3 out of 4 of those are going to go away within the next year.
100%.
How do you measure success, and what are you doing as a metrics, and how do you improve going on to accept the applications to the accelerator to keep bringing up the curve to diminish that 3 out of 4 and hopefully make that out of
that's a bunch of questions in there, but they're all great. So I'll
New
take one at
Jersey,
a time. So personally, as an accelerator, several of our metrics of success are based around the agreements that they're able to solidify while in Houston. Because we don't have a strong capital environment where they can raise their next round necessarily, although some of the seed funding has been pretty interesting to see them get. So that's one measurement of success, that they get investment. But the other one is, are they making formal agreements? Are they doing a pilot with Texas Children's? Are they onboarding a new key opinion leader from Methodist? And we track those things not only through the program, but as alum, and we're following them. And you're right. I mean, I wouldn't say 3 out of 4 have failed because probably the time period is too slow or too low right now. But we've already seen several disband and several, go bankrupt, as we would expect. And obviously, we're always looking for those that exited. We've had 3 exited out of the 88 companies that we supported, which is kind of a shock to us. We thought we'd have to wait a little bit longer. But since we take later stage companies, I guess it's not so much a shock. The other things that we measure for success is really how their companies are building out. So are they carrying the momentum that they get in the medical center or in the accelerator forward beyond? So we ask questions like, how many people have you hired since coming through TMC X? Have you changed? Have you pivoted since coming through TMC X? What is your business model since coming through TMC X? I mean, a success for me sometimes is telling the company that they're not worth being a company, or pivoting their use case, which can be detrimental to them as a company. So, and we've had that. We've had actually the TMC X5 that I threw up there with all those logos. One of those companies, we told them there's no market for what you're trying to do, and you need to go and validate that, because what you're saying sounds great on paper, but it doesn't sound like it's going to work without you validating it. It was with the neurosurgeons. Yeah, so we have just 12 members within TMC Innovation Institute. That's who runs this whole thing, just 12 people, all of which have some clinical healthcare or scientific background. So then of themselves, they bring to the table some kind of scientific integrity. We have 250 advisors, as I mentioned, that we use to vet different aspects of their business model, of their product development plan, of whatever the case may be. We work with a lot of local firms as well. So we have local firms product development firms, for instance, full service product development firms that we vet the companies through, or as they're going through our program, we say, you know what, you really need to go talk to A, B, and C and see what they tell you and come back to us. But we bring all these companies back to the fundamentals. I mean, we consider ourselves much more a business accelerator than anything else. We're not a product development accelerator. We're not a regulatory accelerator. We're not trying to get you 0 to 5, 10K like the guys in Tennessee. We're looking at it from what is your value proposition? Who are your customers? What are your channels? Have you validated these or these assumptions? And really bringing them back to the basics. And this is one of the things that I find most interesting. It doesn't matter how late stage the company is. A lot of them have no clue. They haven't even considered some of these fundamentals. We have a company that's raised 40 plus million, is CE marked, FDA cleared, and they're having trouble for some reason getting reimbursement in the US. And we're like, okay, let's start from ground one. I know you probably think this is stupid, but we're going to make you do a business canvas model. And of course, they rolled their eyes like, okay, we've done that before. It's stupid, whatever. They could not articulate the value proposition. They seriously could not articulate it. And I was challenging them. I was like, guys, you can't even articulate your value prop. How do you expect to sell this thing? And it was something that, as an elementary, as a value proposition, that it really opened my eyes to all companies need to have at least their basic assumptions challenged and make sure that whether or not it's been validated. And so, as a strategist, that's part of my job, but it's also part of my job to facilitate introductions to people that are much more experts than I am at particular aspects of their business or whatever the case may be.
Lance, there are a couple people in this room who could help them.
Yeah.
With their value proposition.
Yeah, so great point there, Joe. Real quick, so we work with a lot of service providers, product development firms, IP attorneys, regulatory quality folks, and John, as I mentioned, is one of our advisors that come through and either host office hours that can be done virtually, it can be done in person. They'll participate in our curriculum by teaching a session or sitting on a panel. So we invite certainly anybody and everybody that's interested in what we're doing to Houston, virtually or in person, to support what we're working on. We want to be that third party that says, here's some vetted folks that you guys don't have to worry about. And so if you're trying to get your intellectual property finalized, you don't have to search 45 different IP attorneys. We've worked with these three, and these three we know have been successful, and people have validated them. So here you go. And that is value that I think one of the biggest values that we bring as an accelerator, any accelerator probably brings, is vetted service providers, vetted consultants, vetted partners to the forefront.
If people come down and help in Houston, do you pay their airfare?
No, we don't pay airfare.
Come on, man.
Sorry.
All right, then here's Josh.
We'll pay your parking. We'll pay your parking. That we can do. Yeah, we can pay that. And you can have the space. You can have an office there for free, basically. So.
Hi, Lance. First of all, congratulations on this is a phenomenal model that you are helping create. And my name is Prash Chopra. Thank you, Thor, for bringing my question up earlier about the definition of success. I just joined the UCSF Surgical Innovations program, which has been a closed incubator mostly to see if surgeons can innovate with engineering help. So my question to you is, and really looking for advice here more than anything, what is your insight into a program like ours? Who want to scale but want to become self-sustaining as well, not having to rely on NIH grants or revenue money, but outside of what you just said, because we obviously don't have the kind of real estate that TMC has. Any insights there, please?
Well, so we work. Sorry.
We don't have space. We are crowded Silicon Valley.
Not a parking lot. So we work with, each of these hospitals has their own independent office of innovation. We work with Baylor's Department of Surgical Innovation quite closely, actually. I mean, this is kind of a canned answer, but a structured process by which you commercialize devices and spin out startup companies, I think, is the key to sustainability. Baylor has a really good. It's not their Office of Technology Transfer. It's basically a separate incubator accelerator that they're focused on actually commercializing devices and actually commercializing the intellectual property coming out of their research institute. So I would say a structured process, not one by which you figure out, because we have this experience too. We had a Methodist physician invent a device, and he goes to OTT and he's like, hey, I want to take this forward. I want to build something out of it. And they're like, we don't know what to do with that. We can build some IP around it and license it and try to figure things out for you. But they had no clue what to do with him. In fact, they gave him his IP, 100% of it, and said, go ahead and build your own business if you want to do that. And we went back, like, what the heck are you guys doing? Like, you can structure a process to support physicians like this, actually retain some of the equity or the IP, ownership, and that's where sustainability comes in. Don't give away your IP. I mean, if you're supporting a researcher who's developing some incredible things, support them beyond the research. Support them in that commercialization effort. It's very difficult because, and in your case, what I would suggest is, finding those community partners that know what they're doing and know how to commercialize a device, not trying to internalize and vertically integrate all of it. because I think hospitals should not be creating medical devices, should not be commercializing them. They should find the partners that are capable of doing that, and then actually creating a structured process to do so. So that's probably the piece of advice I'll give you is focus on the structure of the process, and secondly, find those community partners that can support it. Don't try to do it all on your own.
So I think maybe you probably already answered the question because it's kind of a follow-up to Precious. What would you recommend to smaller institutions? Like you've got 21 different hospitals all right there. What about, it's one or two hospitals in a local area wanting to do a similar type of model? We've got a couple back home in Michigan that are trying to do this, but like you see them trying to launch, but then falling off.
Yeah, so we work with a lot of accelerators around the U.S. I mean, we partner with them, we share curriculum, we share companies, we discuss companies, we do a lot. And what we found to be, this is another simple answer, but leverage what your community has to offer, right? Obviously, the world's largest medical center is our backyard, so that's our differentiator. So we look for companies who are pilot ready, who are clinical trial ready, who are willing to kind of be able to inject their device, their innovation directly into these institutions. Because when you have that playground, that opportunity, that critical mass, you can do that. But when you don't have it, you have to search for other things in your community that can support startup companies. And that may be through capital, that may be through expertise. I would say this, we work with Cedars-Sinai and their TechStars accelerator. They have, and like other accelerators, they have the ability to say, if you come through our accelerator, you automatically receive a pilot with our institution. We can't say that. But that's a strong pull for startup companies who don't have that kind of opportunity. So if you have a small health system, but they're willing to commit some kind of relationship prior to the company arriving, and then obviously as the application process goes through, they kind of accept or not accept whatever. But that's something we can't offer. We cannot offer them a direct pilot with Methodist. So I think it just depends on your community. It depends on what you can offer them.